Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about science fiction. We're talking about science fiction today, classic science fiction, which I love. Now, usually, science fiction does not invade your real life like it has here at stately Von Manor with a visit we have received, Roger and I, from future Roger. Roger, from 300 years in the future, has traveled back in time in his time machine to visit us, Roger and me, from the present. Hello, future Roger. So, future Roger was feeling nostalgic for these olden days when Roger and I would make dopey YouTube videos and stately Von Manor wasn't yet underwater. The future sounds kind of terrible, but we have received a visit from future Roger. So yeah, you're sitting in for this video today, future Roger. That's nice. Roger is a little worried about his future, I think. But today we are talking about science fiction. So let's all talk about science fiction. So science fiction, I love classic science fiction. I have a ton of classic science fiction. I always intend to read more of it than I do. And so in 2025, I've got a plan to read at least one classic science fiction novel for my collection a month. At least one. There is 1 month in July when we have Rocket Summer. Rocket Summer is returning, Roger, in 2025. And that is going to be a month entirely filled with classic science fiction. But every other month, I'm going to read at least one. So I've got a year's worth of paperbacks sitting here. I will read one a month. And let's talk about these books that I'll be reading. So for January, I'm going to be reading this book. This is A.E. Van Vogt's The Voyage of the Space Beagle. It's The Voyage of the Space Beagle. A scientific expedition into deep space becomes a nightmare battle against alien intelligence. I guess that is the alien intelligence there. This is a very 1960s cover, it looks like, but the story is quite a bit older than that. Let's see when The Voyage of the Space Beagle was written. Let's see here. So, copyright 1939. So yeah, it's an old story. This particular paperback, though, is from 1963. And I always enjoy A.E. Van Vogt when I read his stories, but I haven't read this one yet, remarkably enough, Voyage of the Space Beagle. So yeah, this is January. I'll be starting the year with this, so that's awesome. And then the following month in February, I'm finally getting to a book that I should have read by now. I'm always hearing how I should have read this book and I'm stupid for not reading it yet. And I think there were 3 books. I think it was a trilogy. But this is the only one I have, and it's the only one I ever hear anything about. And that is The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. The Forever War. And I believe this was written in the 1970s, I think. It's a 1970s book. Let's take a look. The Forever War, copyright 1974. Actually, it looked like it appeared originally as separate stories in Analog magazine in 1972, 1973, and 1974. And then it was printed as a book, it looks like, in 1976. Or at least this book was printed in 1976. So yeah, very 1970s. The Forever War. And I'm finally going to get to it in February. Finally. So yeah, The Forever War. And then the next month, I'm reading a random anthology. It's just a random anthology I picked out. This is Earthmen and Strangers. Look at that goofy cover. This is edited by Robert Silverberg, who put one of his own stories in the anthology. But we also have Eric Frank Russell in here, Randall Garrett. Isaac Asimov is in here. Damon Knight. Harlan Ellison is in here with Blind Lightning, which is a story I don't think I've read. And Arthur C. Clarke is in here as well to make it all classy. At least as much as you can with a cover like that. This book is from, when was this anthology put together? This book is from 1966. So 1966. Earthmen and Strangers. Humans and aliens on a collision course. Star-studded science fiction. It's star-studded. So yeah, there we go. Earthmen and Strangers. And then, in April, I'm going to be reading a book from an author I like a lot, and that is Roger Zelazny. And the book is This Immortal, which was the winner of the Hugo Award for science fiction. I think at one time that meant something. So this is Roger Zelazny's This Immortal. It's supposed to be really, really good. I've never read it. There are a lot of Roger Zelazny books I haven't read yet. And this is one of them. When was this written? It's copyright 1966. Although this paperback is from the 70s. So, yeah. This Immortal. I'm looking forward to this. And then I'm going to be reading another anthology the following month. And this one is very, very old. This is the Pocketbook of Science Fiction, which is edited by Donald A. Wollheim. And has fantastic tales of super science. Fantastic tales of super science. It looks really great. And this is old, man. I mean, you could tell as soon as you open it up. This is an old paperback. And it was printed in 1943. And this is the first printing, apparently, from 1943. So there you go, the Pocketbook of Science Fiction. Has some cool stuff in it. And it has some authors in here that I don't think I've heard of, or at least have never read. And it also has some authors, Ambrose Bierce is in here. Wallace G. West is in here with The Last Man. And Dawn A. Stewart with Twilight. But we've also got Theodore Sturgeon's in here with Microcosmic Gods. Robert E. Heinlein has a story in here. H.G. Wells is in here. So it should be a great anthology. I'm looking forward to reading this one. Now, following that, the next month is going to be, I think this is June. This is going to be a book that I'm not even sure if it's really science fiction. It could be fantasy. But the cover is so badass that I have to read it. It's Robert Silverberg and the Book of Skulls. Look how awesome that is. I want a poster of that up on my wall. So, yeah. The Book of Skulls by Robert Silverberg. It's got to be great, right? It's got to be great. Whatever it is, it's got to be awesome. And this was written, has to be the 60s. It has to be. No, it's the 70s. It's from 1972. So yeah, that looks about right. First printing, 1972. So The Book of Skulls from Robert Silverberg. And then we're getting into Rocket Summer. I believe this is the book for July. And Rocket Summer, like I said, is going to be a whole month full of classic science fiction. And I had hoped to read this book last year, but I didn't get to it. Going to get to it this year. This is The Tomorrow People by Judith Merril, which looks really interesting. This is Judith Merril's second novel, I believe. And this book was written in 1960, right? Yeah, first printing 1960, although this particular edition is from 1968. So I love that cover. So we'll see how the book is. Judith Merril's The Tomorrow People. He came back from Mars with a secret too terrible to remember. It was too terrible to remember. I wonder what that is. We'll find out in Rocket Summer. Then A.E. Van Vogt returns the following month with Empire of the Atom. It's Empire of the Atom by A.E. Van Vogt. But that's not all, because this is an ace double. So we also got Space Station Number 1, which was written by Frank Belknap Long, which was H.P. Lovecraft's pal, Frank Belknap Long, who wrote a lot of science fiction that not many people read anymore. Space Station Number 1, Empire of the Atom. that's going to be fun. I think the last time I read an ace double for the 500 book challenge, I counted it as one book. So I'll probably count it as one book again. But that's going to be awesome. Following that, we have James Blish in a novel I've never read. This is Vor. It's Vor. About a horrifying first contact, I believe. And this book was written when? This book was written in, copyright 1958, so it's pretty old. But the paperback itself is from 1970. But a 1958 story, Vor. It's Vor. And then we're going to get to a book that I've wanted to read for a while. Grammaticus, the great Grammaticus. I think he made a video. Yeah, he made a video on this book. This is Berserker by Fred Saberhagen. Berserker. And that's actually a Boris Vallejo cover, believe it or not. So yeah, Berserker, about human beings fighting aliens who are robots or something like that. I don't know, I haven't read the book yet. But it's got a good reputation, this book, and it was a whole series of books, I think, from Fred Saberhagen. This one was written when? Well, copyright 1967, but it has different stories in it that were written in copyright 1963, 64, 65, and 66. So 1960s, Berserker. Looking forward to that. That's going to be cool. And then Jack Williamson and his Legion of Space. It's the Legion of Space. This was a series of books by Jack Williamson, which I've never read. I think I might have read one of them, actually, but it wasn't this one. I think this is the first one, the Legion of Space, with another cool cover. And this was written when? 1950s? No, 1940s. Fantasy Press Edition was published in 1947. And actually, it's older than that. Look at this. Copyright 1935. So, copyright 1935 for Astounding Stories. This particular edition was from 1969. So, yeah, the Legion of Space from Jack Williamson. November, I'm going to get to that. And then in December, I'm revisiting Robert A. Heinlein. Not my favorite science fiction author in the world, but this is a book I heard a lot about after I did my video for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This book kept coming up in the comments, and that is The Puppet Masters. And I did read this, I think, years ago, but I don't remember too much about it, frankly. So, yeah, Robert E. Heinlein's The Puppet Masters, about an attack from space, the day that alien monsters invaded the world. So that sounds great in itself, although Heinlein's writing it, so there's probably going to be a lot of Heinz-splaining going on in this book. There's the Dean of Science Fiction himself, and this has to be the 1950s. It just has to be. Let's see. Copyright 1951, so yes. I don't know when this particular paperback was published, but it looks awesome. It's The Puppet Masters, so I'll be reading this a year from now in December of 2025. So that's my big plan. Those are my big plans for reading science fiction in 2025. Finally going to get to some of these books. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of vintage science fiction paperbacks. I'll never get to them all, I don't think. Well, you could tell me, Future Roger, do I ever read them? He's being silent on the subject. Oh, well. Well, I will catch you next time, probably only with one. You are going home, Future Roger, right? You are going back to the I think he's got to go back to the future, right? We'll see. Okay, guys. We'll catch you next time.